These are some of the most prolific hitmen in American history. Number 1, Wayne Silk Perry. Wayne Perry is a notorious hitman from Washington, D.C., who operated in the 80s and 90s. And according to authorities, it is believed he is responsible for as many as 100 homicides, which earned him the nickname the Michael Jordan of the murder game. Number 2, Richard the Iceman Klaczynski. He is a notorious hitman who operated in the New Jersey and New York area between the 1970s and the 1980s. And according to authorities, he was given the nickname the Iceman because after he killed his victims, he would put their bodies in the freezer so authorities couldn't determine the victim's time of death. And it is said once he was arrested December 17, 1986, he told investigators he was responsible for the death of 200 people, which included the death of Jimmy Hoffa, the death of mob enforcer Roy DeMaio, and NYPD police officer Peter Calabro. Number 3, Gennario Meatball Arthur. He is a notorious hitman from New Orleans, Louisiana, who operated in the 80s and 90s for the Glenn Metz organization. And according to authorities, they believe his body count can be high as 70 victims. And as of today, he is currently serving a life sentence in Florence ADX in Colorado. Number 4, Roy DeMaio. He is a former mobster who was the leader of the DeMaio crew, who was a crew of hitmen who worked for the Gambino crime family in the 60s, until his death on January 10, 1983. And according to authorities, Roy and his DeMaio crew is responsible for up to 200 murders during their time working as the enforcement crew for the Gambino crime family. And it is also said the DeMaio crew killed most of their victims by using a method they called the Gemini method, where they would lure their victims to their headquarters called the Gemini Lounge, and once their victims got upstairs, one crew member would shoot the victim in the back of the head, while another crew member would immediately stab the victim in the heart to slow down or stop the blood flow from the victim's head, while another crew member put a plastic bag over the victim's head before taking the victim to the bathroom to dismember their body parts. And according to authorities, it is said Roy DeMaio was so feared that even John Gotti passed up on a contract to take DeMaio's life. Number 5, Charles Harrelson. He was a hitman who operated in the 60s and 70s up until his arrest in September of 1980. And according to authorities, they believe Charles is responsible for up to 15 homicides, which included the murder of U.S. District Judge John H. Woods Jr., who was shot to death outside of his San Antonio home on May 29, 1979. And it is also believed Charles could have been part of the JFK assassination. Number 6, Chester Campbell. He was a hitman who operated in Detroit during the 60s and 70s, up until his arrest in February of 1975. And according to authorities, they believe he is responsible for up to 50-plus homicides. Authorities also say between 1969 and 1975, he murdered 10 people that they know of, and during his arrest in 1975, police found 300 more potential targets in his notes during the search of his car. Number 7, Joseph the Animal Barbosa. He was a hitman for the patriarchal crime family in New England during the 1960s, and according to authorities, they believe he is responsible for up to 26 murders until his death on February 11, 1976. Number 8, Jorge Rivi Ayala. He is a former hitman who operated in Miami, Florida during the 1980 cocaine cowboy drug wars. And according to authorities, Rivi was a hitman who worked for the godmother of cocaine, Griselda Blanco. And authorities believe he is responsible for over 3 dozen hits during his time as Griselda Blanco's hitman. Number 9, Stephen the Rifleman Fleming. He is a former hitman who operated in Boston, Massachusetts during the 70s and 80s for the notorious Winter Hill Gang, who was ran by James Whitey Bulger. And according to authorities, after Stephen's arrest in 1994, he confessed to 15 murders in 3 different states, but police believe it could be way more than that. And as of today, Stephen is currently serving a life sentence at an unknown Florida protection facility.